Hey, good evening, folks. Can you all hear me okay? It looks like I'm a little low. Good adjustment. How's that? Great, thank you. All right, good evening. Seeing all members in attendance, I will now call the Common Council of the City of Plattsburgh of New York Finance and Community Development Committee meeting to order on March 11th, 2021 at 5 p.m. All members are present. And the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the February 11th, 2021 Finance and Community Development Committee. Approval of those meeting minutes. Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Canales. Any changes, alterations, or deletions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 2.1, draft resolution authorizing the Chamberlain to transfer for the fire department personnel, clothing, and equipment, page 1. I'll take a motion. Motion by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Moore. Discussion.
Yes. So this was not budgeted, and they realized that they needed this passed. Is that what happened?
That is accurate. This item was unbudgeted, if you will, in the June 2020 austere budget. It was never returned as an item. We do have cadets going through the academy at this time, and they do need equipment to go along with them. And so this is a movement of finances from their contract services into the personnel clothing.
How many cadets do we have going through the academy?
I believe at this time we have 4 cadets going through the academy.
And these are the ones that like got held up because of COVID. They couldn't go through the academy.
No, that you're thinking of last year, Patrick. Those cadets were hired as part of the Safer Grant Plan and the adding the second ambulance. Those cadets were dropped from the training program because of COVID, and then they ended up completing it last year. I think this is because we had some existing positions leave. Isn't that right, Mayor?
Accurate. And there's some vacancies to fill. This is not an increase of staffing in the fire department.
How many
Right.
people? So we had 4 people retire from the police department or leave the police
From the fire department?
Sorry, fire department. Yeah.
There are a number of vacancies and I believe 1 retirement. I'd have to go back and look at that. I would have to go back and look.
Okay.
Well, we had 1 leave. We had 1 retire.
Richard, are you familiar with how many personnel this covers?
Right now we have 39 firemen on the payroll. Just went over it today and took a look at the overtime and counted up the heads. It's 39. So I think that what's happened is 4 have been hired in anticipation of people leaving this year. Scott should be here to tell us all the details on that. But Councilor Gibbs is right. The 4 that were being trained for the new ambulance or the additional ambulance went through it last year, and you'll see in the POs this week that unfortunately one of them wasn't invoiced for last year. So they don't do POs at the fire department until they get an invoice. So therefore we get a 2020 expense coming forward into 21 for one of those trainees. But the people that are being hired now to go through, I think, like you said, are all for anticipated reductions in staff. But Scott's got the details on that. I haven't been provided with those. But
So,
39 people are on the payroll for the fire department.
And Richard, does that include the 4 hired in anticipation of leaving? So does that 39 number include the 4 that are in academy?
Yes.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
And so, Richard, why is the amount being taken out of fire contract services?
Well, it's budgeted for 100,000, and we spent about 89 there last year. And so we're going to see if the contract services comes in lower. This personal clothing wasn't budgeted adequately to cover it. And of course, going back to the austere budget from June 24th, in the budget reviews at the end of the year, we didn't go over every account and every department and take a look at what was really needed. We were focused more on the personnel issues, and certain departments did have deficiencies in some of their accounts, and they were just never covered.
So, but if we're replacing people that are leaving, and I assume the people that are leaving in retirements are generally pretty experienced with cadets coming in right out of the academy, there'd probably be some free or some money freed up in the payroll department, right? Because I imagine cadets are cheaper.
Yep, cadets. Well, there's no real title for cadets. Okay, I know we throw that term around, but there is no job title for cadet. They're firefighters. But yeah, new hires are started at a lower rate, but they escalate pretty quickly. So there should be some budgetary room this year based on what you're discussing with, reductions in higher payrolls being replaced by lower payrolls, in case we need to move something more to contract services later in the season.
Now, my other question is, so why are we purchasing EMS gear? Because Elizabeth was just saying that the 4 added last year were for the new ambulance. So with these 4 additional firefighters going through academy, would they be on the ambulance services as well?
Yes, everybody at the fire department goes through or participates in EMS service, especially the new employees. What you usually get is about 10 or 12 young employees that do all the ambulance calls, and the older ones say that they've done their duty on that and they just don't get qualified anymore, and they don't participate in the ambulance calls. They just wait for fires.
But I also want to clarify that, because every single firefighter that's trained is trained in EMS. So there is a call out and people can respond to that, whether those folks, according to you, Counselor McFarland, is whether they're specifically trained for ambulance calls or whether they're being specifically hired for running ambulances. I don't know if that's an accurate explanation to hiring those people specifically.
No, but they do all have to participate as ambulance.
Correct.
Ambulance employees, EMS employees. Some get higher degrees of certification than others, but the older employees drop their certifications because they don't participate in the ambulance calls after a certain number of years.
Any further discussion on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 2.2, draft resolution authorizing the Chamberlain to transfer funds for municipal building capital outlay City Hall HVAC. I'll take a motion. Motion by McFarland, second by Councilor Moore. Discussion.
Yes, actually, what is HVAC? And I'm sure I know this, but I can't remember.
Yeah, it's the HVAC system that's being installed in the mayor's office, the mayor's office, the mayor's assistant's office, and the city clerk. It's an upgrade to the air conditioning and heating systems in those offices. This is actually an item that's being covered by IEEP funds, reimbursed by IEEP funds, which is why it looks like 2 increases to the recovered expense as well as the municipal buildings capital outlay. So it's a covered expense.
What is that budget line, recovered expense? That's just something we have there that will be reimbursed later. Is that what that line item means?
It's a revenue item, and it's a recovered expense, meaning you can get recoveries of expenses from prior periods or current periods. And what's going to happen here is we're going to spend this money on these HVAC systems, which officially stand for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, not to confuse anybody with the term. But the recovered expense is going to be the IEP funds will be applied for and returned to the general fund to cover this expenditure. So it's an estimated revenue item.
Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 2.3, draft resolution authorizing the Chamberlain to transfer funds for building inspector contract services. Motion? Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Canales. Discussion.
Yeah, I would love a little more explanation on this about the removal of a chimney.
Well, there's a hazardous structure on Court Street. The chimney is in danger of falling over onto the neighbor's property and potentially into the neighbor's building. It was requested, and there's some question about the financial status of the building itself, and where it's currently at in terms of foreclosure or not foreclosure, or the financial ability for the owner to actually respond to removing the chimney. We have not had a response from the owner regarding removing the chimney. And so it's going to now be up to the building inspector to perform that duty and then recoup those costs through that building code civil compromise fund, which either pays through additional liens in terms of increased taxes, increased property tax assessment onto that property, or it will end up being part of I think how it was explained to me, it'd be part of a sale of reimbursement if that property ever gets sold. So at the end of the day, the city's made whole for that, for hiring out those contract services.
Okay.
May I just add one other point? I don't believe Joe's on. I just have some more context as well.
Yep.
So this is under the city code has an unsafe structure code section, which allows Joe McMahon to make a determination that there's an unsafe structure and follow a process. In this case, he was starting down that process, but because the chimney apparently is moving closer and closer to collapse, and that could impact the neighboring parcel or potentially the public, there is an imminency, which allows Joe to fast track the process, do the work first, and as the mayor noted, recoup the cost eventually, but it does allow him to make that emergency determination, which I believe he has made.
I just went and looked at the property. It's right across the street from my office. I can see. I mean, I can't tell if the chimney is faulty, but if a chimney does fall, it would certainly fall over a driveway and hit the building next to it.
Apparently it's moving inch by inch, it's measurably moving.
And our department doesn't have the ability or the expertise to remove it. So that's why it's being hired out. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 2.4, draft resolution authorizing Chamberlain to transfer funds for water sewer administration multimodal facility. Motion. Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Canales. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Draft 2.5, or sorry, resolution 2.5, draft resolution budget transfer, authorizing the Chamberlain to transfer budget from general fund finance department contract services. Motion. Councilor Gibbs, second. Councilor Canales. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. All right, item 3.1 under community development, it's a draft resolution approval of change order number 2 for Saranac River Trail Phase 2. pages 6 through 12. Motion, Counselor Gibbs, second by Counselor, anybody can raise their hands. Yep, Counselor McFarland, thank you. Discussion.
Yeah, I see.
Just
Oh, sorry.
go ahead, Counselor. I'm sorry.
I just see that the original amount and the new amount is the same amount. So
That's correct. Correct. Thank you for pointing that out. That is correct. So the budgeted amount, the original amount has, and the new amount for the change order has not changed. That's because there's roughly about $160,000 in what's called a field change payment line, which has already been budgeted in the original contract amount. That field change payment amount is I believe it's like 160,000 or so, from which any change orders will be subtracted from that 160 or that budgeted line item under field payment change. So there's not going to be any change to the actual contract. What happens is the difference between what's paid out of that field change payment line and any changes, any change orders, the balance is then paid back to the city. So the $11,000 will be paid out of that field change payment budgeted line already.
And so I see this is for a new or additional.
Yeah. So the problem came in with the design of the original bridge, which is the bridge that's crossing over the Saranac River at Pine Street. The original design mimicked the old design, and if you remember what the old design looked like, it was this fantastic rustic old steel, like wooden bridge with some steel railing, but the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials deemed that the spacing between the steel railing was too large, and they said it was unsafe, and we needed to go back and do a redesign to shrink the gaps shrink the holes between the railing, which increased the material costs and the time to install, which is why this is a change order.
So there's just more steel railings making it the gap
Yeah.
smaller, so I just imagine children can't fall through or something like that.
Correct. Or you. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 3.2, draft resolution approval of temporary closure of 29 parking spots for the Betty Little Arts Park construction staging. That's on page 13. Take a motion, Councilor Moore, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion.
Yeah, so what exactly is this asking?
So we're looking at, so as part of the construction of the Arts Park, we need, the contractor, the construction contractor needs to store equipment as well as material close to the construction site. So what we're looking at is carving off 29 spaces on the northwest corner of the southern subdivision of the Durkee Street parking lot. So it's essentially 29 spaces right across the street from the Arts Park. Okay, 29 spaces calculates to be 3%, I believe, of the total parking availability in downtown. We didn't see that being a high impact to the parking area downtown, and so we're allowing for them to use that spot temporarily between April to September.
Yeah, that's only 10% of that one parking lot too. Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Discussion 3.3 is a traffic zone designation number 972. This is an implementation of a standardization of parking times downtown, or I should say in the special assessment district, which is defined as to the north on Cornelia Street, to the south, the river, and to the west, it would be Oak Street, and to the east, I believe it's Broad Street to the south, Oak to the west, Saranac to the east, and Cornelia to the north. So it's essentially this special assessment district. The idea here is we're standardizing the parking time all to 2 hours, where some is 1 hour, some's half an hour, some's 2 hours. So the entire special assessment district is going to be standardized to 2 hours. The signage is going to be performed by DPW per, what's it called? New York State Manual and Uniform Traffic Code. So it's probably going to be standardized signs.
Yeah, we even have some 10-minute parking things, I believe, right in front of Ashley.
Which is fine. I think that we'll look to see like some of those where it's 10 minutes, because those are like automatic. Those are like demand pickup, like, you know, short-term pickup. Like there's a 10-minute parking there. There's 10-minute parking as designated in front of 20 below on Bridge Street.
Yeah.
Right, you're right in front of the co-op, and so those will likely remain. Everything else is going to change to a standard 2 hour. Like for example, in front of Aleka's, I think it's 30 minutes, and then across the street it's like an hour and a half or something like that. So
yeah, I think all of Margaret Street right now is 30. It's 30 minutes or maybe an hour. I will tell the council that this was a recommendation of the parking review committee, and it's my understanding that the enforcement has pretty much been matching this for the most part anyways. When I talk to business owners on Margaret Street especially, you know, they aren't too worried about cars being towed in an hour, even though the signs there are 30 minutes or an hour. So I'll just put that out. But we may want to look at it again in the future and make sure that we're getting enough turnover on those places. But this was a recommendation of the parking review committee, and I think it makes sense that all the downtown has the same sort of 2 hour parking.
So the thrift store that is across from, or it's next door to the food co-op, is that going to have like a 10-minute free or some kind of parking that will accommodate the need of that business? Because I remember talking to the owner of that business, and she was insistent that if there isn't at least a parking to accommodate people coming in, dropping off right in front of their business, it very likely would hurt their business. So is that going to be accommodated by this?
And are you speaking about the 10-minute parking right in front of the co-op?
Well, no, it's not right in front of the co-op. It's is it Dress Code? Is that the store that's on the corner?
Yeah, that's where there's the 10-minute parking right there.
Yeah. Okay, so is that going to stay that way to accommodate them?
I believe so.
Okay.
And I will not. I mean, you'll get some. This does do less turnover for places that are under 2 hours. Like I said, most of it's been enforced at about 2 hours, anyways. But there is a trade-off. Certain businesses like the co-op, and, you know, if those businesses are, you know, people I think shopping at the co-op probably don't park there and go in for 2 hours, although so they might want faster turnaround. But we should be able to get data on this, especially from the parking enforcement officer. But this is just for uniformity in those in the 2 hour parking. But there is some trade-offs, and I suppose we'll see if it causes any problems with certain businesses whose business structure doesn't necessitate 2 hours. If people are coming in and parking in front of them for 2 hours and then going somewhere else.
Any further questions on this one? Okay, 3.4, there's a discussion on the Community Development Office projects. I asked Mr. Miller to present to the council a number of the projects that his office is working on, and it's very comprehensive. And I believe everybody received this list. The ones that are grayed or highlighted, those are the ones that are potential projects or things that are kind of on the periphery. But all of these are either active or being actively worked on, or they are just about to be worked on, or things that I've asked that office to start to think through and take a look at a number of these. What I tried to do is I tried to go through and just in my own kind of sense of it, just put some categories to them. Certain things are just internal operations. Certain ones are like beach infrastructure, economic development, quality of life issues, recreation, climate concerns, things like that. So I just try to give a good sense of what that office is up to. So it's just similar to what we did with the with DPW, their list of projects that they're working on. But I think that this gives a good comprehensive view of the sorts of projects that our CDO folks are working on. And if y'all had any questions about these projects, I'm happy, and I think the staff from CDO is happy to jump in and help explain some of these things and the importance of them.
Yeah, so the dark gray ones, what's the difference between the white ones and the dark gray?
Yeah, so the ones that you're looking at, if you printed black and white, the dark gray ones are ones that that are potential projects. They're not actively working on them necessarily. They are in the kind of in the background. They could be being worked on, but maybe this office isn't working on them. For example, the dog park expansion at the beach, they are aware of it. It's something that they'll help promote. But as you know, Councilor McFarland, that's something that you and I have been actively working on. Some of the beach improvements that we had also talked about, like the nature trail improvements, although that, they're going to be managing the beach this year with Scott Dubray being brought back on board in terms of the day-to-day management of the beach. So although it's not something that they're actively working on, it is something that's in their background of something, those types of things to pay attention to. So when you're looking at the scanned copy, I believe that those come in super dark gray versus the ones that are more lighter in colored, which are the ones that are lighter in color are the ones that they're actively working on right now.
And what is the, so on page 2, it's the first dark colored one on mine, expand downtown historic district. What is that?
So there are a number of properties within the downtown area that are either listed on or eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. That comes with certain tax benefits if the owner of the property goes through the process to actually get the property listed. However, there are additional tax benefits if those properties are located within a recognized historic district. So right now there is a proposed historic district that overlays most of the downtown area. The city would have to go through a fairly involved process to get it formally recognized by the national organization. But the catch-22 that we're looking at here is the property owners downtown are subject to a lot of the restrictions that come from owning property in a historic district, but they don't currently benefit from the tax incentives that are afforded to property owners because it's not technically a recognized district. So they're kind of getting the worst of both worlds at this point. And by going through the process of actually recognizing that downtown historic district, they'd be able to take advantage of some of those benefits that currently are unavailable to them.
Now, do the zoning, like, because so my office is in between Oak and North Catherine, so it's in the historic district, and there's a lot of like zoning caveats with that, and I hear people complain that they can't fix a window or something or replace windows unless they get approval. I remember when I put the sign up in my office, I had to get, there's like a 40-page application with a 15 copies of each one submitted to the planning board. So if you expand the downtown historic district, I know you're talking about like tax benefits. Do those zoning requirements that seem more city-based, do those automatically get expanded, or is that more handled on the city level and we're just trying to expand the taxing benefits in regard to
Elena,
that?
could you talk about how that would affect the historic site review for anything downtown?
I sure can. And you're absolutely right, Pat. That's kind of, I don't want to say it's a downside of becoming a registered historic site or district. But yes, any registered historic site or district within the city is required to go through historic site review with the planning board. It's typically just a 1-month process, but the whole point of it is to protect our historic district, right? So it's making sure people aren't painting their houses purple or putting up siding on a, historic wood building. So it's a protection for the city as well to maintain our downtown historic character. So it's a win for the city. Yes, it's another step for a property owner, but it's all in the best interest of the district. That's all I have.
Any other items on the list that
Thanks,
could explain a little more detail for the council?
Yeah, I see the Skyward development is on there.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we at with that?
So we are on version 7 or 8, I believe, of a draft development agreement with Skyward at the moment. That is subject to the completion of the Harborside subdivisions, because one of the remaining pieces of that agreement to be worked out is exactly the sale price that the city would be willing to sell that newly created Harborside parcel to Skyward for. And we won't know, we won't have a solid basis to determine what the new value of that parcel is going to be until that subdivision work is largely completed. And we're working with the mayor's office and corporation council on that closely.
Yep. And there's a subdivision and an appraisal involved in this as well. I don't know if I may have missed that, Matt. Sorry if I did.
Yeah, definitely an appraisal as well.
Yeah. Any other questions about this list or any expansions on any of these? It's a fairly comprehensive list, and I'm certainly proud of the work that these folks are doing as well. It's more those visionary front-facing things that is, some of it's progressive, some of it is kind of maintenance things, but when we look at what we're looking to do with the beach and some of the more city infrastructure things and complete streets, it's quite exciting to see. And I know that this office has been actively working on the comprehensive master plan, and if anybody got a chance to catch the Late Night for the Planet or any of the other public feedback sessions, it's just been pretty exciting to hear the work that's being done and the thought that's being put into what people want for our city and what we're looking forward to. So. All right, moving on to number 4. Is there any new business to come before this committee?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I had a question, and it's not really under this committee's purview necessarily, but I wanted to see where we're at with the public safety panel's recommendation, because it's my understanding that we need those recommendations implemented by April 1st, or we'll lose state funding. So I was just wondering where we're at on that.
Yeah, so a quick update, and I appreciate that. We are going to also get into this topic in a lot more detail on Monday during the Public Safety Committee. There is a agenda item specifically to discuss this. Not just I will discuss it right now, but I'll just let you know that we will continue this discussion, and per the request and per every meeting, all counselors are certainly invited and encouraged to attend, or at least if you can attend, follow up with watching the YouTube video or the live stream, or reach out to the chairperson of that committee. Right now, we had a meeting with the committee to put plan against the public review panel's recommendations. We are meeting again tomorrow and again on Saturday to continue that work of putting plans against the recommendations. Ideally, we will have something to present then to the council at that point. And that's our goal right now. And I believe Councilor Gibbs is in line with that goal. And once we have that, we will send that plan out for public comment. We will take a week for public comment, get that feedback back and make any additional changes to the plan. And once we do have those final changes, we will send out the final draft that will be submitted to the state, to this council. I believe that's around the calendar in front of me, the week of that 22nd, I believe, of March. And then just wait for any feedback from this council, and then ideally ratify on the 31st for submission that evening, or the next day on the 1st. That's the long game of it. If we need to hold a special meeting, then we'll look to hold a special meeting on that 25th. If we find that, you know, we might need more time to identify some issues, or we need to push it through, or if it's going to take longer to submit to the state after that. But I think we're in line with either submitting on the 20 or ratifying the 25th or the 31st for submission for the 1st.
So something that occurred to me, Mayor, when I was thinking about this today, is April 1st is Holy Thursday. April 2nd is Holy Friday. It's Good Friday. So I don't know if there, you know, I don't know how the division of budget works. I don't know if their government offices may be closed on those days when you have anticipated submitting. I'm assuming this is done through a portal submission. So I just wanted to, you know, voice that that Easter weekend there might not be full staff or open offices. So just want to bring that up.
Yeah, and part of that research, counselor, is that working with NICOM to figure out that process and making some determination on, is it fine to submit on the 1st, or should we be looking at submitting any time before that? If they come back and say, no, you need to submit before that, you know, a couple days or whatever, then we'll look to call special meeting on that week of the 22nd. But I should have those answers here in the next couple of days.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely, thank you. Any new business to come before this committee? All right, seeing none, I will take a motion to adjourn. Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Canales. Welcome back, by the way. All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, folks, and back to work tomorrow, right? I'm back in the office.